G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Damien Cantelo from Apollo Secure based in Sydney, Australia. Thanks for your time today, Damien.
Thanks for having me, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. A past guest we had on a few months ago, Andrew Miller from Growth Experts in the US, episode 542, mid-July 2024, that went live. He put us in touch and thought you'd be a great guest.
Yeah, excellent. He's been helping us out with some digital marketing and made the introduction.
And we've also had you on our Quickfire Friday because cyber security is becoming more and more important for small businesses. So you had a chat with Mick on episode 514. So people may want to go back and listen to that, where you dive a bit deeper into cyber security.
Yep, that was a good one.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Apollo Secure. So we're on a mission to help protect the little guys from the bad guys. So we've developed an automated cyber compliance platform that helps bring together and simplify a number of things that you would normally do with your security, like generating policies, staff awareness training, phishing simulation, vulnerability scanning, a whole bunch of stuff. We offer it on a SaaS subscription-based model. So people pay a monthly fee, and we also have some consulting services to support that as well.
Yeah, most hacks are due to human, error. People letting, hackers in, basically, isn't it? So that training component is really important.
It is, yeah. Between 80 and 90% of cyber incidents are related to human error, depending on whose stats you sort of read there. But yeah, the training is critical because unfortunately, it does come down to someone just clicking on that dodgy link or just doing the wrong thing when they're busy at work and not thinking about it. So training and awareness is critical.
Yeah, you and I were talking in a meeting a few weeks ago about that attack in Singapore. It was a bank, I think, $25 million. It was a very sophisticated, it was amazing what they did with the video. Do you maybe explain to the audience what happened there?
Yeah, so this was generative AI. So the text to video technology that you've seen with the likes of Sora, a product by OpenAI, where it's super realistic video content that's all Gen AI based. And basically they set up a Zoom call with a worker at a bank in Hong Kong, and they had their CFO from the UK on the call instructing this bank employee to transfer some funds, as well as some other colleagues on the call. And the target even sort of called to verify and checked a couple of things, and then went ahead and made a series of transactions in the tens of millions of dollars. So you just can't be too careful. You can't even believe your eyes anymore, unfortunately. So the threat is real, and it's continuing to get worse.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, that deep fake technology. Video is just phenomenal. And maybe explain to the audience also another stat around small businesses that have data breaches.
Yeah, so 60% of small businesses that suffer a cyber incident go out of business within 6 months, which is pretty startling. And look, a recent example of that is MedSecure, which is sort of the e-scripts business here in Australia. Quite an established business, suffered a cyber incident that compromised the business, and they actually just had to put the business into administration only a week or so ago. Which is a big shame because that was albeit more of a mid-sized business, but not that long ago a small business themselves, and they literally just had to shut down the entire business due to one cyber incident. So it definitely happens, and more often than we would like to think.
I saw that you posted that on LinkedIn yesterday. Actually, that's really sad. It was a great service, and obviously because especially that data is so much more sensitive than most small businesses, so they just decided they had to close it.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock and sort of seemed a little bit premature from the outside in. I don't know all of the inner workings of what happened, but obviously, they've got secure in the name, MedSecure. So obviously data privacy is, critically important for patient data. That they just felt following the breach that they couldn't continue and had to shut their doors, unfortunately.
How did you start out?
Well, it's a while ago. I kind of started out when I was at university. If we wind the clock all the way back, the same time that I started at uni, probably 25 years or so ago now. I actually started for working with a tech startup, so just two guys in a room. This is pre sort of .com era, this is sort of late 90s. Started working part-time with them. Within 18 months, we'd grown that business to 65 staff with global offices. I was only in my second year of uni at this time, so it was quite a meteoric rise and unfortunately a meteoric fall because that was a .com era, so around 2000, 2001. The funding dried up and then I had to wrap things up there and then continue with my uni studies as well as joining Trend Micro, a cybersecurity business. So that's where I started in cybersecurity as a follow-on from that business. But that really gave me the hunger and appetite for tech startups and building and running your own thing. So I worked in various corporate roles for probably the next 10 to 15 years following that. So different systems integrators and vendors all in around the cybersecurity world. So that's certainly been my background. And then more recently, I sort of moved into building and running my own tech startups. So quite a long hiatus in the corporate world and then sort of came back to where I started. Most recently a GPS tracking product that we developed and sort of sold that around the world. And it was actually through that experience, we were on the receiving end of these things called vendor risk questionnaires, which is where a little company does a deal with a big company and the big company sends a list of cybersecurity requirements. So this could be 50 or 100 questions about what you're doing with cybersecurity. And given my background in cyber, I was, fortunately fairly well positioned to respond to them, but realized how hard it is for small businesses with limited budgets and resources to do all the things necessary to work with the big guys, So in the back of my mind at that time, and that was a couple of years ago now, I thought there's got to be a way to automate that. Then fast forward to 2022, so a couple of years ago, that's when I kind of thought I was actually approached by a friend's business who was in the same position that we were. They'd been sent a vendor risk questionnaire from their largest client, and they said, you've got to respond, otherwise, we can't work with you anymore. So my friend said, hey, can you help me, respond to this survey or questionnaire? And I said, not only will I respond to it, I'm actually going to build a business that automates all of this stuff because I'd always had that idea in the back of my head from a couple of years earlier. And I thought, hey, this is my next thing. So I got together with my CTO from the previous business and one of the guys that I'd worked with previously in the security world. And we got together, built the MVP, and then launched it to the market at the beginning of 2023, really.
So MVP for the audience, minimal viable product. So it was 2022 you officially started Apollo Secure?
Yep, that's right. It's about 2 years ago now.
Great. And how old were you then?
44, I would have been. Yeah.
And you actually went to uni with a mate of mine, Nick Ellmore, who also was in the cybersecurity space. He started SIFT with another good mate of mine in Sydney. Exactly. So I reached out to Nick after we spoke last time. He's coming on the cast pretty soon.
Yeah, excellent. Nick and I were at uni together. Also with the Atlassian guys, believe it or not, is our claim to fame from our university year. Yeah. And also Nicky Chevek, who was one of the co-founders of Blackberry. So yeah, there's a lot of great guys have done wonderful things from that year, and it's good to see they've all gone to achieve good things.
Yeah, I've met Nicky down here in Hobart when he was speaking, I think, and yeah, it's one of Australia's biggest venture capital firms. Funny story on the Atlassian guys. Another mate of mine who has been on the cast but will remain nameless did some marketing help with the two founders of Atlassian in the early 2000s when he was living in Sydney, and they said, "Oh, thanks for all your work." A year or so, he was just informally helping them, wasn't actually on the payroll, because it was just the two founders working from their apartment in Bondi, and they're down the pub most Fridays. And the guys said, "Oh, we should, say thanks. We'll give you some shares in the business." And he said, "Nah, it's all right. He's pretty laid back. Nah, just buy me beers on a Friday." So that would have been worth tens of millions of dollars.
Big regret.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could have, should have. Oh dear. He'll know for next time, hopefully.
Yeah, no. There's a second story where he missed an opportunity, but third time lucky, he's knocked it out of the park with the business. So that he founded. Yeah. Do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the last 2.5 years?
Yeah, so because we're still early, it's obviously easier to achieve big metrics, but or larger growth rates. But so we're double-digit month-on-month growth in terms of our monthly recurring revenue, which is good. This year to date, so we're almost 6 months in. We've done almost double the revenue this year of what we did in the whole of the 12 months last year. So,
Wow. Yeah.
really strong growth. But again, full disclosure, it is off a low base because we only just started, more recently. But certainly all the metrics are really strong. I think in particular churn rate is very low. So we're sort of hovering in the between 1% and 2%
Per
monthly
month?
churn, which is below
Wow.
where we have monthly. That's right. Which
That's phenomenal.
for SaaS business is pretty strong. So that's good that with cybersecurity, it's a bit like an insurance policy in the sense that once you have it, you kind of don't want to stop it because you know that you do have the protection. You're reducing your business risk, and no one wants to cancel the month before an incident occurs. So and obviously the platform does deliver a lot of things, and there's good value for money there. Our clients would normally spend $50,000 or more for consultants to come in and do the things that we do on the platform for only a couple of $100 a month for the starting plan. So there is a lot of value there and a lot of real tangible deliverables. So fortunately, we have some happy customers, which is great.
And how many full-time equivalent team members did you start out with, and where are you at now?
So there's kind of 4 of us in the core team, and then a similar number of contractors, and then a few others sort of come and go. So still a small but sort of agile team. We've got a good strong team, and everyone sort of delivers beyond what the headcount would suggest. But small but growing team.
So around 8 full-time equivalents now. Was it the 3 of you that started full-time?
I started it myself initially. The other guys, my CTO and guy who's looking after our security, sort of came on to help sort of build that. But this has actually been, I've had a couple of startups. This has actually been the first one that I actually started by myself initially, which is kind of an interesting dynamic. I mean, previously I'd sort of just jumped in with someone who I'd met who sort of had an idea or were working on something together. And we started as initial co-founders. And although Mark is my CTO, he's certainly a co-founder, but I did just kind of, because that was my background and kind of where the idea came from, just kind of really grabbed the bull by the horns and ran with it, and then built the team around the concept and the business.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Oh, I think that's an ongoing thing. It's a relative term. So I don't think we've achieved success as I define it in the business as yet. I think we are achieving success, but I don't think it's sort of more the journey than the destination kind of approach. But I think signing up customers like Surf Life Saving New South Wales is a really good milestone. It's obviously a big, reputable brand. They've got a whole bunch of surf clubs that we help support, as well as their head office at New South Wales at the state level. So I think getting brands like that on board is fantastic, and we've got a bunch of others as well. But that was the first kind of real key logo that we had on the books. I think customer validation, like when clients really say, "This is awesome, this is really helping." So anytime you have customers giving positive feedback, especially unsolicited, like I know it's one thing to ask someone for a referral, but just people commenting on LinkedIn or just giving you positive feedback via email, it's just good to know that you're helping customers out and you're on the right track.
What does success look like to you?
Look, I think for me personally, it's about achieving the goals that I've set for myself. And I think really at the end of the day, it's building cool stuff that people love to use. So I think there's probably a metric in terms of staff count or market share or something, just where you become a respectable and reputable player in the market. Obviously, the external lens is more sort of your traditional financial metrics. So whether that's an exit or an IPO or one of the big sort of exit events that you talk about, or a strategic trade sale or something like that, that's certainly how the investors see it as success is when they get paid back. But obviously, we're not in it just for the money. We're more mission driven. Here to, as I said, help protect small businesses from threat actors. So for us, I think once we're known globally as a reputable cybersecurity player, I think that's something you can hang your hat on and rest easy at night knowing that you've achieved something.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Testing. I think testing is the thing, because digital marketing, it's changing so rapidly. Like even books that were only a couple of years old sometimes are a bit out of date now, that you really need to test things. And even if you talk to people who have achieved success and they maybe built a business a few years ago and have said, oh, it's all about this one marketing channel or a couple of things or whatever, that might be true in their industry for their product type and their ICP and that stage that was maybe a couple of years ago, maybe that was during or pre-pandemic. Now, AI is obviously a big part of that. A lot of people are generating massive amounts of content, and there's different ways of kind of doing cold outreach and other outbound activations. So I think it's just testing it. You've just got to put a budget behind things, have some key metrics that you want to achieve, and run things in parallel. I think to say, hey, let's do this one thing for a while. Oh, that didn't work. Let's do this other thing. You sort of do need to test a few things, put a similar amount of time and budget against each of them, and then see what sort of metrics you get back. And if that's number of leads or customer acquisition costs, whatever it is, but just have your key metrics, test it all out, find what works, and then double down on that. Yep. And look, we're still working through that process, so we don't have all the answers, but that's the approach that we're taking.
Yeah, totally agree. And as I sent through to you a copy of our marketing funding flywheel ebook that I wrote, there's 3 principles at the start of that book, plus a shit ton of tools and other advice. The first principle is, obviously track the right data. And then the second one is test, and then test again. And the third one, very relevant for you, but also for most businesses, which is the LTV to CAC ratio, lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio. So very, very important to test and track the right data. How did you fund the business?
Self-funded initially. So myself initially, and then the co-founding team put some initial seed capital into the business. And then we did a pre-seed investment round sort of around mid last year. So about a year ago now. So we got angel investment from the likes of Sydney Angels, Brisbane Angels, and Angel Loop, which was great because we could get some people who are quite hands-on in a good way. They're proactively making introductions and helping with guidance and advice and things. So yeah, that's what we've done. And then sort of soon we'll be doing a seed investment round as well. So in the early stages with a SaaS business, often you are reliant on external funding. We obviously want to get to profitability as soon as possible. So yeah, essentially mostly external funding to get us where we are today.
I had Liz Rard from Brisbane Angels actually on the podcast back in January, episode 457. Did you get to meet Liz?
Not sure if I came across Liz. She wasn't our main point of contact there.
Yep.
But yeah, you get exposed. Like typically the process there with similar angel group syndicates like that, they have a pitch night. You go along and pitch, answer some questions. They go away and vote, and then you get a bunch of, hopefully a bunch of new investors who come in under. So they're just one entry on the share register because it's through a syndicate. But then there's a bunch of investors sit behind that, and they all put in however much they put in, and then that gets pulled together. And yeah, as I said, you get one shareholder on the register, which is good and easier to manage that way. So.
Yeah, that's good. And Liz mentioned in her episode talking about Brisbane Angels that one of their investments had turned to unicorn status, so $1 billion valuation. So they are pretty heavy in tech, which is great to hear. So do you, out of interest, do you get, with the Angels, do you get like any mentoring or advice from them, or is it?
We do. We had a board seat available to one of their nominated people, Martin, who's been fantastic, and there's also a board observer. So there's another member from the board group who comes along to the board meetings, and they're always available for advice. I mean, these guys often are, super passionate about technology, sometimes retired or at least sort of part-time working. So they've got time on their hands, and that they do this as I said, some of them as a side hustle, but others as kind of a full-time or a retirement plan. And so they've got time to help, so they can mentor you, advise you, and sit on the board meetings and help coordinate things like the corporate side of things as well. So they've been very helpful.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Definitely. I mean, for me, I had a realization when I started Apollo that when I'd sort of, worked on other startups before, they weren't actually within my core field of cybersecurity. So I've been doing that for many years, as I mentioned. So I probably should have got into cybersecurity to start up sooner, instead of the other things were a little bit left field, still good businesses, but not in my area of specialty. So So yeah, absolutely, I would do it again. And obviously, it's a growth area. It's growing at well into double-digit growth a year, depending on which metrics you're looking at, whether it's market size or revenue or total cost of the industry, that kind of thing. But it's high growth sector. You're helping people, like when you actually talk to people who have suffered a cyber incident. I know we were talking just before, Troy, that someone had been hit with a cyber incident. We had it wasn't a customer of ours, but someone who got introduced to a business who unfortunately lost $2 million, and it's only a small business, and they lost $2 million to various forms of business email compromise and scams over a period. And it's just heartbreaking to think, look, you're literally destroying lives and businesses in the process here. So it is, you do feel good about yourself that you are actually trying to help protect businesses, which, in the case of small businesses, they are, people's and families' livelihoods and something that they've built up often through generations. And to think that's being put at risk by scammers and hackers is obviously not a good thought and something we're trying to help prevent.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Stressful times. Yeah, like I think tech startups, the highs and lows, people always talk about the roller coaster ride. I think for me, it's actually more if there's any sort of issues to work through with the core team, that they're probably the more stressful things. I always sort of think we're sort of bunkered down, we're in this together, and it's okay if you've got competitors or customers that churn or you lose a big deal or whatever it might be. They're all external, I won't say threats, we don't consider customers threats at all, but at least external factors that you can deal with that. But if there's ever any sort of inner turmoil, is obviously a little bit more stressful to deal with. But I think, look, the fundraising side of things is harder because when you are dependent on external funding, as I mentioned, we are, that does mean if the cap raising process does drag out, as it did last year, I mean, the financial markets are tighter now than they have been for a while. So it does take time to raise money, and not everyone's been able to raise money in this climate. So yeah, I suppose that's a little bit stressful when you're sort of running short on cash and need to get the investment in. Fortunately, we're able to do that relatively unscathed last time, and hopefully again on the next round. But yeah, cash is always the most stressful thing, because that's when you think about, I got to pay for the mortgage, and you got family to take care of and things like that. I think that's where it really hits home. But yeah, you just got to stay focused on the outcome, really.
And do you have, or are you targeting businesses outside of Australia or just focusing on Australia?
Predominantly Australia, but we do have some overseas customers. But the reality is, when you're starting out, it's hard to try to boil the ocean. Although obviously the US and indeed UK and Europe and even Asia is obviously much bigger than Australia. So it's tempting to go, let's just launch into the US, and there's often the tech startup, well-trodden path of get to the US as quickly as possible. It's 20 times the size or more. So there is that temptation, but for us, we really want to make sure that we achieve product market fit very much in our local market here in Australia. And the market's big enough here. I mean, we only need a fraction of the Australian market to be a very successful business. So for us, we want to focus our energy here, and that's mostly down to sales and marketing, because if we're making X number of calls a day, it's like if they're in Australia and the US and Europe, you're just not getting the penetration. And I think if you look at concentrated effort where you want word of mouth referrals and things like that, it's better to dominate one market first.
Yep.
Different people have different schools of thought. I think depending on your industry and your type of product, you might be sort of lured into the US sooner rather than later. But for us, we want to achieve a bit more here before we launch overseas formally.
Well, yeah, when you do get to it, you may want to have a look at the EMDG, Export Marketing Development Grant, because it's not just for exporting physical products, it's also services as well. So federal government over 8 years, each year will give you either 40, 80 or 150 grand, and you need to match that, but that can go into even just Facebook ads, for example, overseas.
Yeah, absolutely.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Sales. It always comes down to sales, and I think this is something that hopefully a lot of the small business owners out there are either from a sales background or just have a passion for their business and they just naturally know how to sell it. But in the tech world, often with technical founders, the sales side is sometimes overlooked, sales and marketing, let's say. But I think in particular, just the proverbial picking up the phone, even if that might be cold emails or, but phone is a very effective way of doing it, or just tapping your own networks, getting to events, whatever it might be. Just, bare bones sales is really what it comes down to. It really needs to be founder-led sales, at least. But I mean, we're B2B SaaS, so we're a little bit different. If different bricks and mortar businesses might be different. But still it's selling. At the end of the day, people buy from people, unless there's a human at the end of the phone or the email or the chat or the whatever communication mode it is. Really, it's just, knuckling down and getting on with selling. That's definitely the way that you can make the biggest difference, because money solves all problems, at least in a business sense, at least most problems. It won't solve all your personal problems necessarily, but in business, if you're worried about the team or market size, whatever, if you've got money coming in, then the other things are less of a problem.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Look, I think, again, the roller coaster, like the troughs of the roller coaster is kind of where it's, you kind of think, oh, I just lost this deal, or, as I said, if it's a people issue or, a product challenge or something like that. I mean, you just sort of learn to sort of get on with it. But I think it's definitely the low days when things aren't going your way. It's par for the course though, so I don't let it get to me. But I think they're the days that you think, oh, let's try and have a good day tomorrow. So managing the peaks and troughs, I think, is probably it.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
The fact that you get to do something different every single day. I think that's what I enjoy the most. I just love wearing different hats. Like I'm across sales, marketing, product development, cap raising, finances, HR side, contract renewal, reviews. Like I just enjoy doing lots of different things. I think I'd be very bored just being pigeonholed. So I actually just enjoy that diversity, because you never get bored. You don't sort of feel like you're stuck in a rut. Even though things, some days, as I said, you do feel like you're losing more than you're winning on that particular day. But at least one tip I actually do have, when you do feel like, if you've just lost a customer, for example, if there's a big deal you're hoping for, it's like, okay, fair enough, let's put sales on hold for today. Let's focus on the product, because we've got a new feature coming out. Let's just do that, get excited about that side and do that. Or, hey, let's focus on marketing, or let's spend time with the team on something that's, a bit more positive. So I think that's because you've got lots of hats. If one hat starts to, be a bit depressing, just swap hats for the day,
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I think the can-do attitude. I think it's just kind of learning to, it is that multiple hats wearing. I think it's, look, people might say focus on what you're good at. And I think that matters more once you've got a bit more traction, or if you've got business partners and or co-founders who can do those things well. So absolutely find a good co-founder. If you're not technical, get a technical co-founder. If you're not into sales, get a sales co-founder, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think in the early days, you have to wear those hats, because if you're paying lawyers to read basic contracts, and look, you should still get a bill to read stuff, but at least I know enough to be dangerous in those areas. Like, can save money on doing certain things without needing to outsource or pay consultants to bring them in. So in the early days, it is good to wear lots of hats, but as you grow and start to stabilize, then yeah, it is good to specialize a bit more and bring in experts where you need to. But yeah, I think just learning to switch hats and do that properly to get through is probably the main thing to learn.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think this is around the Stockdale Paradox, which is something, if you've heard Jim Collins' Good to Great, or read it, I say heard because I do audiobooks, but so yeah, he talks about the Stockdale Paradox, which is I think it's Admiral Stockdale.
Was was the Vietnam War? He was a prisoner of war?
Exactly, that's right. And what he observed there was, as a prisoner of war, you can imagine worst possible scenario. You don't know if you're going to live or die or see the day through. And what he observed was people's mental attitude to the situation. That some people were either super positive, like, hey, we're going to be released tomorrow, everything's good, everyone stay positive, we're about to get home, don't worry about it. And then people who were super negative, like, oh, we're all going to die, we're not going to get out of here. And that he noticed that both people at both ends of the spectrum didn't survive, because those who were optimistic kept getting let down, or they were over optimistic, I'll say, kept getting let down. It's like, we're going to be released tomorrow or next month, and then they'd come and then they wouldn't. So they would just get depressed after a while. And those who were negative, obviously, would just, it's a mindset thing. If you think, things are going to happen, then they tend to happen. You sort of self-actualize it. Whereas it's kind of like the steady as she goes. It's having an unwavering faith in your ability to endure and or succeed, but not being too high and low. So that's why we sort of had a bit of a thing. I sort of always said that I'm always between a 7 and an 8 out of 10, just in terms of mental kind of motivation and attitude level. That when we win a massive deal, I'm not like doing backflips off the wall or anything. And when we lose a deal, I'm not kind of falling into depression. It's more, you just always steady as she goes, because of that roller coaster I was talking about, if your mood swings are with the roller coaster, you just can't survive years or even decades to build a successful business. Hopefully it doesn't take that long, but it can do. So yeah, if you're just really feeling those peaks and troughs, then you can't do it. You just need to cut a straight line. Sort of imagine the line of best fit through the roller coaster, highs and lows. That's kind of how I try to stay focused. And that's obviously the prevailing wisdom around doing that to persevere.
Are you struggling to find time to work on your business? Or is your health and relationships out of balance? Lost confidence, or are your weeks filled with fear? Our free 10-day Transform Your Performance online course shows you how to unlock at least 5 hours a week. We start with the secret to guaranteed success, and with over 100 lessons and free tools, you will become more focused, productive, and feel more in control of your business, health, and relationships. GrowSmallBusiness.com. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
One of the things that we did do is set up a founder vesting schedule. So this was where the early core team members all signed up to an agreement where we had an equity allocation, but we had to stick around for a certain period to vest those shares. So fairly standard arrangement. Talk to your lawyer about that. As I said, some things you do need to talk to your lawyer about. But yeah, or you can get templates from people if you have advisors and things like that who can guide you on that. But basically that just means that everyone's there for the long haul. And if it doesn't work out, which it hasn't in all cases for us as well, then at least everyone knows where they stand, and they say, hey, look, you've been with us for this long and this worked out, so you get this much equity, and thanks for your contribution, but you didn't stick around for the full time. So some of it, you don't get to vest. So that's just a much easier way to manage things than if you have to wait until the unthinkable happens, because you don't always think about it when you're coming into business. Everyone's excited and passionate about the future, and you don't always kind of get things on paper. I'd say that's certainly more important than a business plan. I would say, like when you're saying, we've got this cool idea for a new business, and everyone says, yeah, write down your business plan. Yes, you should absolutely do that as well, although it will change, but still it's good to write something down. But the founder vesting schedule is the most important thing. We just did a simple one-page kind of term sheet sort of thing. You don't need the full long-form thing. You can do that later once you get funding, depending on your style of business and if you need funding. But either way, it can be a simple agreement. And then it just means that, as I said, unfortunately, if things don't work out, it's just not uncomfortable. I mean, it's still a bit uncomfortable, but it's not a terrible conversation where you need to say, oh, well, you only did this or you didn't do that. It's just, here's what the document says. We got to this point. That's the number. Here's where we go. So that's made it much easier to work through those situations. So that would be my strong advice around. That's for the core team. Then around just general hiring everyone's part of the core team, but I'm talking sort of, management team or co-founding team. But I would say generally with hiring anyone, I'm a big believer in having people run a trial period, even if it's only for a half a day. The thing is that anyone, well, within reason, a lot of people can come across well in an interview, and certainly with ChatGPT and other things these days, yep. Especially if it's a virtual interview, they can be having live prompts. Yeah, yep. Exactly. Well, either a deep fake or there's little prompts that can sit and listen to the interview and prompt you with answers and things like that these days. So Definitely
Wow.
do your interviews in person if
Yep.
you can.
Yeah.
I know that's hard in today's digital world, but I think beyond that is like we get through the interviews pretty quickly, and we say, hey, look, if you're ticking all the right boxes, come in and do half a day, and we pay for their time, or a full day. We pay for their time, but it's just as a day rate. And then we decide based on that whether they're right or not. Because as all business owners would have found, it's like, oh, he or she interviewed really well, but after the end of the first day, I knew we'd made a mistake. So our view to that is do the first day without committing, and then decide and find a task that's achievable within the time frame, and then won't require too much upskilling. That's obviously relevant for their role. And for us, software development, that's kind of the key role in a tech startup sort of business. But customer success, salespeople, whatever it is, but get them in, and once they're in the office or virtually even, but once they're actually doing the job, then you find out very quickly if they've got what it takes to succeed in your business.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in doing those test projects. Absolutely. Yeah. What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think the main thing about culture is believing in the mission and the vision of the business. I think if people don't buy into that, then everything else will be difficult. Just performance, attendance, motivation, all of those things that as business owners, you've got to keep morale up and keep everyone firing. But if they don't believe in that bigger vision, and for us, as I said, it's about helping protect the little guys from the bad guys. If people don't believe in the fact that we're actually helping small businesses stay in business, if they're not bought into that mission, then everything else becomes hard. But if they do care about that and they want to create something cool and be a part of that journey, then the other things do become easier. But I do also believe, look, I have to be honest, I do have a tendency to sometimes micromanage people if they're not performing, and I know that can be frustrating as an employee. But as a smaller, startup, you do need to kind of be across a lot of things. But I think once someone has proven that they can do what they need to do in their role, you do need to cut them enough slack to go and do that job without sort of feeling like you're looking over their shoulder. So that's something that I've had to work on and continue to work on. And for people like, Mark, who's my CTO, I give him all the leverage in the world because I just know that he's amazing. He's the best tech sort of resource and business partner I could hope for. And having him know I don't have to, oversee much of what he does. But with new starters, obviously, you're more kind of watching what they're doing. But as soon as they prove themselves, you need to give them the independence to succeed in their own right.
Hello, audience. How you've handled balance?
Balance is tricky. I mean, as I said, the first startup that I worked for, I was, what would I have been, like 19 at the time. So I think work-life balance, that's more balancing work and pub time, not so much, work and family time, which is more, I've got a couple of kids and, wife and family and everything at home, which is fantastic. And they're very special to me, of course. And it's really important to keep that balance, because if you don't have your family to support you, or if you're working too hard and not spending time with the kids and everything, then things do get out of whack. So I try to manage that as best as I can. Things like I try to be around in the mornings to help either get them ready or sometimes drop them at school, but it's hard to get to work on time if I do that. And then in the evenings, I'll take time off to spend time with them, just to have dinner as a family, watch a bit of telly, read them a book for bedtime and things. And then I'll do some work again after they're in bed. And then, at least for the moment, where I can, I try not to work on weekends. So I try to do more work of an evening during the week. Look, running a small business, as we all know, you do have to work overtime, but I prefer to work late during the week when the kids are in bed versus the weekend when we could be out doing something. I am doing some DIY projects at the moment that are taking up a lot of my weekend time, so that doesn't help the situation so much. But yeah, I think you've just got to find the schedule that works and try to stick to it. I know that when you've got a bottomless list of things to do, it's easy just to fall into the trap of just like continuing to work. But your health and your body and your family will fall apart, and that'll affect your work output. So yeah, try to have a set of rules and stick to them as best you can.
Yeah, I love that small business truism. You get to choose when you work those 80 hours a week.
Exactly. What a luxury.
Yeah. How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
I try to read and listen to as many books and audio books as I can. I've done some courses and stuff probably earlier in my career. More recently, it's more from mentoring and audio books. That's what I do. I try to listen to audio books either on the commute to and from work, or just just when I'm doing DIY, these projects I'm doing at home, I'll often have my AirPods in and just listen to audio books, and it's a good way to just kind of consume a lot of content pretty quickly and easily. Even when I'm going to bed, it actually helps put me to sleep. Do put the timer on though. If you're using Audible, you can make sure. Otherwise, you fall asleep and it keeps playing, and you lose
Yeah.
where you're up to.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can actually pack a lot of listening time into your day. That's why I prefer listening over books. Obviously, it's a natural, easier medium, but books are great. But yeah, I find listening to business books, sales and marketing books, startup books, and audio books. That's the way to go for me.
Yep, I'm the same. I spend over 10 hours a week on my own professional development at 1.5 speed, audio books and podcasts,
1.5 speed. That's good. I've tried that, but I find that you need to be just focused on doing that thing. If you're doing it while you're commuting or DIYing or whatever, I find that I have to keep pausing and going back. So you're doing well to be at 1.5 speed, but yeah, I'm a bit old school on the 1 speed.
No, I can do it like driving the car, taking the dog to the park, or shooting hoops in the sun.
That's
Yeah,
good.
I don't find there's no one yet that I've had to slow down. There's a couple of times I had to go back to 1 speed to revisit a point, a really intricate point, but
Mm.
mainly around numbers. But no, it's yeah, it's just great. It's just get in the zone. You mentioned mentors. Have you had coaches along the way, or do you want to maybe comment on your mentors?
Yeah, I had a mentor in my previous business. Currently, I mean, I've got people that I call on for advice in different areas, like whether it's about the tech startup stuff or, just people management things or whatever, but no one that formally I would call an active mentor right at the moment. But that is something that I have set a goal to kind of find someone to help guide me that's relevant for this business and the stage that we're at. But previously I have, and that was a board member in the previous business. And he was fantastic. And I think that's good. And obviously I still do have the board here, so they're still advisors. I mean, I haven't formally engaged them as a mentor, but still I do rely on them for advice. And to be honest, a lot of it is just a sounding board. It's just sometimes when you actually sort of explain the situation, that the answer is often there. So even if it's talking to, your parents or your partner or whatever, but I try not to, put too much of the baggage on your family, because they just get a bit. I mean, it's not that they do care and they want to help, but you just you'd constantly be whinging to them if they
Yeah.
were dumping everything on them. So I try to keep that separate, but just, yeah, just occasionally if your parents ask how things are going, and then when you articulate something, then you sort of go, actually, yeah, I need to do that thing, So even just a sounding board is often really helpful. But yeah, I think it's great, especially when you're going through different periods of the business's growth or different challenges or things like that. It's really helpful to know that you've got someone there, because it can be a pretty lonely journey. I mean, especially if you are a solo founder, as I mentioned, obviously Mark is obviously my co-founder and business partner, and so we talk about a lot of stuff as well there. So that's obviously more of a peering relationship, but at least just to have someone to talk to about stuff, and especially because they're in the business, so you don't have to catch them up on stuff. You can just sort of say, should we do this or that? And it's like, yeah, let's do this. So I think sometimes it's good to have people who are outside, but also others that are not necessarily just inside the business, but know the industry or the growth stage or whatever it is that you're at, that can offer sage advice. Because unfortunately, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one. So,
Yep.
if
That's
you've
right.
asked the wrong person a particular question, everyone wants to help, so they'll
Yeah.
just say what they think is right. They're not being malicious, but they'll just say, "Oh yeah, fire that person," or "Oh,
Yeah.
whatever," even if it's not the right thing.
So you have a board of directors. How many board seats are there? How often do you meet? And do you have a chairperson?
So we've got 3 board seats. That's myself, Mark, and Martin from Sydney Angels, and then an observer. couple of guys from Sydney Angels are observers. I am the chairperson, just because we're still early stages. That's still the way to go. We do have monthly board catch-ups and a quarterly in-person where everyone comes, including the observers, and we all sort of have a more structured approach to things. But the monthly check-in, because we do find that just getting the agenda and the minutes and all the actions and things like that does take up a little bit of time. And because we're focused on go-to-market and product development and other things, we keep it to calls for 2 months, and the third month is the meeting that's a bit more formal.
Yep. Now, you've exited a business. Any advice for those listening thinking of exiting one day?
Look, well, to be honest, the last business we didn't exit the way that we wanted to, so we had to actually wind up the previous business because of a large contract that went south. So the advice that I would offer there, so we had a GPS tracking business, and we had a deal with a large telco in the US that placed a large order on us. And we sort of put too many of our eggs in that basket. So it's sort of hard when you're a growing business and you get this big, shiny new deal. And look, we went into it with our eyes open, knowing that, we couldn't rely on it 100% coming through. So we still kept our direct channel and our other channel partners. But when you're talking, multi-million-dollar deal and lots of inventory that we had to sort of invest into for that deal, when they cancelled the order, it basically spelled the end of the business at that point. And that contract was binding, POs were binding, they couldn't cancel, and everything said, yep, it's all full steam ahead. But unfortunately, as a large business, they just do whatever they want. So they just cancelled regardless of what the contract said. Look, you just need to be aware that deals aren't done. Even when they're done, they're not done, unfortunately, until the money's in the bank. And look, some of the money was already in the bank, but until all the money's in the bank, the deal's not done. So unfortunately for that, for us, that meant the end of the business at that particular time. So you do just have to think, make sure you fish while you're whale hunting is kind of the analogy there. And we did still do that. So even if you still do that, you might come unstuck regardless. But you live and learn from these things. But even if I had my time again, we would probably still go down the same path, because we had all the right protections, as we thought we did all the right things, and it was a big opportunity. Just unfortunate it didn't work out on that occasion.
Have you watched the movie Blackberry, Research in Motion, who created the Blackberry?
No, I think you mentioned that one to me, actually. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm keen to hear, because I was working sort of in and around tech and telco at the time of the Blackberry, and was a big user, and obviously they just vanished into insignificance fairly quickly. So keen to check that one out, though. I'll definitely stick it on my watch list.
It's hilarious. And there's the start, they had this big order with I can't remember which telco, but they produced all these modems out of China. I think they had like $2 million worth of inventory sitting there, and they had a $6 million order. It might have been AT&T or one of the big telcos. They just shafted them, jerked them around. But yeah, it's a pretty funny movie.
Sounds like exactly what happened to us.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out for sure.
All right, Damien, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think listening to customers and getting your product or service right to match it. I think that's the often you're wedded to your original idea, and I think really letting go of what your initial concept was and doing what the customer wants and needs, even if it's not what you think they need. I think that's something that you continue to wrestle with, because you're like, no, I know the customer's better, they need this thing, but in reality they need something else. So you've got to be disciplined around that.
Like Henry Ford said, if I had have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
I would say The Lean Startup by Eric Ries is a bit of a Bible for tech startups. But I'd say if you're not in the tech startup world, I would say Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore that's like decades old. To be honest, we tried to follow that in my first startup in the late 90s, and it's still relevant today.
Yep.
Crossing the Chasm, I think, is an all-time.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
You actually got me on to Built to Sell, which is good. I've been listening to that since we first spoke. And that's great if you're B2B or any type of business. If you're building it to sell, it's selling a business, not selling a product, just so you're clear on the title there. I know you know that, but so your listeners know. So that's a great little resource I've just started listening to. And I also listen to some cybersecurity ones, but they're a bit more niche for what we do.
Yep. And you've also been listening to a few of the marketing, the positioning books that I sent through and sales books, Jolt Effect. And
Yeah, Jolt Effect is a good one, and also obviously awesome.
Yep. It's April Dunford on positioning. Yep.
Exactly. So that's been good for us around just, and I know people often roll their eyes at positioning. And look, it does depend on what line of business you're in. If you're a bricks and mortar retailer or, services business or whatever, you might think, oh, we're just a gym or we're just a fruit shop, whatever it is, you think it's just that thing. But you always see ways that people differentiate what they're doing. In fact, there's that one of the episodes, sorry, on the Build to Sell podcast was about a yoga studio, and I thought, oh, there's not much to learn for me as a tech business, but they actually didn't even, I think it's Pilates. They didn't call themselves Pilates. They called it something else. I forget the name of it, to be honest, but it was interesting because I just listened to the April Dunford thing, and the whole thing for them was they're not calling it Pilates. It was differentiating it. So I think for anyone, you can still position yourselves differently.
Yeah, that Pilates episode was amazing. She sold out for $100 million.
Yeah, which is amazing for a Pilates chain. Like that's
she got to about
phenomenal.
100 outlets, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Real go-getter. Phenomenal story that. Yeah, but I highly recommend the audience. John Warrilow, we've had him on the cast here a couple of times. His weekly podcast is excellent. So I listen to 3 or 4 episodes a week to get through the back catalogue. And his 3 books, Built to Sell, The Art of Selling Your Business, and The Automatic Customer, are all excellent books as well, as are April's books. Obviously awesome sales pitch, and the Jolt Effect as a sales book as well is tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Call me old school, but I think cash flow forecasting in Excel. I know that's really, really old school. I haven't yet found a cash flow forecasting tool. A couple have popped up that I'm going to give a try, but irrespective of what tool you use, but cash flow forecast, cash is king for a small business, especially if relying on external funding. Like us, you've got to know what your runway is, where your cash inflows and outflows are coming and going. So yeah, cash flow forecasting. I know that's boring and maybe a bit antiquated, but that's my best tip. But there's heaps of sales automation, marketing automation tools. We've been using tools for LinkedIn outreach, email outreach, some automation tools in and around that are all fantastic. But cash is king, so get that right.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm the same. I haven't yet found a tool that can replace good old spreadsheet for your cash flow forecasting. Although the business I've helped with the last couple of years, an online business, they're just testing out an add-on to Xero. I assume you use Xero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's called Fathom. So I haven't had a look at it yet, but
yes,
that might be something to have a look at.
Yeah, we actually did use Fathom in my previous business, which is good if you've got multiple entities. It can consolidate your forecasts and reports, which is quite cool.
Right. Yep. Finally, my favorite question: what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Stick with it. I think that's it. It's the long, the road is long and hard, but yeah, you just got to persevere.
As Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Damien. I've really enjoyed our chat, and great to have you on again for a second time after the Quickfire Friday episode. Congratulations to you and your co-founders and the team, growing over the last 2.5 years up to around 8 FTE at the moment and helping small businesses. I love the strapline, the small guys, from protecting the small guys from the bad guys. I really think that's genius.
Yeah, excellent. All right, Troy. Well, thanks for having me on the show. And if anyone's interested, check us out at apollosecure.com. And thanks again, Troy.
No worries. And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcasts to help with their growth will find us.